with Renee.
Yo. We wait all week and all day for more. Saturdays with Renee.
Oh, what's up, world? Welcome to This Is Not Supposed to Be Like This. Why is it like this? Actually, that's a good way to start the show because the world is not supposed to be like this. Why is it like this? All sideways and crooked. But this is episode 89 of Saturdays with Renee. I am, again, Saturdays, for some reason, I struggle with the internet connection. I don't understand what is going on, but Jared Ball, Renee Johnston, please like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, all the links in the show description. Welcome back to Black Liberation Media. How you feeling, Renee?
I am struggling with the capitalism today, man. It's a struggle. It's a struggle today, but we're going to be all right. I mean, there's not much choice. So,
yeah, I've seen the run sheet, so I look forward to another great show here. So, folks, you are in for a treat for sure. But yeah, it is definitely wild out here, and the analyses that are coming with the moment are just as wild. So. I'm going to say I said I was going to do it, but when I saw Dylan Rodriguez on with Jared and Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, I said I was going to bite the way he puts his keffiyeh on his chair.
it's
So
dope.
I just wanted to call it out, claim that I've bitten, despite coming from the era where biting was not acceptable. I'm at least acknowledging it.
I feel like though, if you bite, but you acknowledge that you're biting and you credit the person you bit from,
then
it's different. No,
I hope so. I mean, I'm big on citing sources. So, I've always felt like plagiarism is among the easiest things to avoid. It's just as simple as saying, as so-and-so said.
Right. It's not difficult.
It's not.
I agree. It's not difficult.
So as Dylan Rodriguez was doing, I'm trying to do a little bit. So that's it.
There we go.
That's it.
I just banned that person because.
Oh, really?
Something
happened already?
It's that same once again person who was.
Oh, yeah. Once again.
So now they're gone because I feel like they got the warning yesterday. And so
back when the roots were good
yesterday and you came back today with nonsense, I'm just not doing it. I'm not.
No, that's fine. No. That's fine. And they're a subscriber too. They're clearly, because the settings would not have allowed them to comment within this time frame if they wwere not already a subscriber. So they've subscribed and feel like that for some reason that's how they want to spend their time engaging this space.
Right.
It's crazy.
Right.
It's crazy.
So
it's crazy. So yeah. But I had asked before we got started. I'm hoping the internet will let me do it. I did want to, even as a segue to get into the topics we have set. I was watching something that I thought would be a good way to sort of be that segue.
Let's do it.
And so the context quickly is this is a channel. The link is already in the show description to one of the channels that I watch regarding soccer. And this is someone who has been, and then I like it because they get very critical of the U.S. men's national team, which is always fun for me, and because they have been of the last couple days and weeks just getting trounced a year out from hosting the World Cup. There are people who are getting a little concerned. And it's been a little bit of funny. There's been some beef. There's been hostility. People calling each other out. There's that former players talk about new players. But this person is commenting on the horrible state of the team. Why is he, just going through his life of being stressed as a fan? And earlier, he has been critical. One of my favorite parts that we won't see in this is that he's been critical of what he calls MAGA Messi, which is Christian Pulisic, who is the star of the U.S. men's national team from Pennsylvania, who has, we've talked about on the platform, has been a registered Republican, Trump supporter, did the Trump dance after a goal, and but has not been playing. He's been on a break as the team's been getting trounced. So that's just a little bit of the context. So I'll just pull up this this little clip, and hopefully we'll be able to
care about them anymore. There's nothing to be proud of in this country right now. Last week when I was at TST and they decided to play the national anthem before the final and then also did the whole fucking plane shit, I mean, I didn't fucking remove my hat. I didn't put my hand on my heart. All I could do is just laugh to myself. Because this shit is so ridiculous. Because how could I be proud of a country that right now is just deporting innocent people, silencing any protesters, they're just shooting people out in the streets. Why should I fucking have any kind of pride for that? I'm seeing videos upon videos upon videos of just innocent families being broken apart from their children during school hours, after graduation or before graduation. How the fuck can I be proud of this? You have people who are being arrested for simply just speaking out about this, or any other cause that doesn't align with the government's groupthink. Land of the free my fucking ass. I mean, they even have plans to deploy ICE at the Club World Cup. It's not like you can just ignore this shit. It's as blatant as it gets. Also, I'm so fucking sick and tired of the finger pointing because everyone is so damn selective with what they choose to blame. Oh, it's the coach. Oh, it's the MLS players. I've even seen some dumbasses blame the rainbow numbers. What the fuck do colors have to do with defending? It's so extremely counterproductive because in the reality of all of this, the root of the USMNT's problems is this disgusting greed in our country. Everything not only has to make money, it has to squeeze every single fucking penny out of your pocket. Ridiculous ticket prices, the attempted monopolization of domestic competitions, and let me not forget, pay to play. It is all why our program is the way it is. And to think this will be solved by a new coach. Oh, we gotta bring in BJ Callahan again. Or, to fucking rely on the next generations like the fucking U16s, the U9s, the U2s, whatever the fuck. It's foolish. It's insanity. We got the Gold Cup in like a day or two as of this recording. And I'm serious, man. We could actually be grouped. Not only that, we could be an absolute embarrassment on the world stage next year. And if you think that'll prompt any kind of change, just remember, we failed to qualify in 2018, and 7 years later, nothing of note has changed besides the fact that our players don't know at all what it means to represent their country. I'm so fucking tired, man.
So I could not stop laughing when I first watched that. This was my favorite. Because it starts with, it's like 5 minutes or so of him just trashing the team and their performance, commitment, preparation. And then this is the part that he works in. It's like, oh, and by the way, I can't stand this country either.
Look.
So I know, the shit is, I'm sorry, the shit isn't funny. The world is not, what is happening is not funny.
But it's not, but at the same time, just like how people get mad because I giggle too much, like shit is so outrageous that you're either going to laugh or cry. And like, I feel like laughter is way healthier. Like, it's just.
And I mean, the part of the humor for me is in that sort of dissonance between wanting fans, particularly the white ones, I admit that, who want this team to win, and they keep saying our country and this country, and they want the U.S. to do well and represent well and this, that, and the third. But then in some cases like this, where there's some, at least I don't know how radical this guy's politics get, but there's when there's some base level of humanity involved, there is like, and by the way, you want us to get all wrapped up in the flag and support this team. But I literally have family members and in-laws who have said that they're no longer going to these games. They had intended to go, and they don't feel in part safe that they'll be undetained. And ICE has said, we're going to be there. We're going to be at these World Cup, the Club World Cup, for anybody who cares. It's the biggest clubs in the world play like a World Cup tournament every 4 years, and that's about to happen. And folks are saying they're not going to the games, and I hope they don't. And I hope these stands are empty. And I hope it's like the 20% hardcore white American fans with their flags and, all liquored up, red faced, screaming everything. And I hope the rest of the stands are empty.
Look, so I'm not, admittedly, not big on football, American soccer version of the sports. It's just not really my thing. Mm-hmm. And when I used to work at Fairfax, actually, I used to sell tickets at games. And so, you're there. So I tried to get into it. I just couldn't do it.
No, I get it. And, but in this case, it's it's just it's not the sport per se. It's the whole nationalism and sports washing and sportsaganda or whatever. And
it's rough. I gotta see, because there's that document. It's Dave Zirin that did that documentary a long time ago about the connection between the military and the NFL and that whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. I wonder if we can get him on, just because the conversation is still relevant, and I feel like as things right now are going in such a way that I truly question people who are like, yay, America. Right? When I just even contemplating that people still see that, feel that, I wonder, is it just that they just don't want to see or feel anything else? I always question this thing, how do you live here and sustain being in such a thick bubble of not knowing that you could still be American exceptionalism, right? That's still a thing for you, because I question it, how it's possible.
That's interesting.
I just don't know.
So one, definitely remind me, but Dave is reachable. And I've just recently, in fact, been in touch with him because I was hooking him up so he could interview Robert Wilson, who's part of our soccer crew or football crew of discussants, to go on Dave's show. So Dave's reachable. Dave's good dude. I think he would be more than happy to join us one Saturday.
Is he still doing the Thursday mornings on?
Yeah, he's on PFW. Okay. He's still on WPFW, and then he has, I'm sure, a bunch of other things that I'm just not up on. But he's still reachable. And so yeah, we can definitely make that happen at some point for sure.
Right. And I'll point out, y'all, that I may not like football, but I am still a football watcher. It is my contradiction.
Listen,
Look, it's rough. It's rough.
Again, again, my point in arguing that the Vernon philosophy is as I described it, an immaterial boycott is or an intellectual, I meant boycott is because I'm not advocating that maybe we should advocate this, but I'm certainly not revolutionary enough to fully advocate that people just avoid stuff. I don't think in this media environment it's possible. And that's where I might even slightly disagree with you on, I think without the interruptive moment politically, I think it's very easy for people to disappear into American exceptionalism. And one disturbing example, and I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want the connections to be findable, and they would be in this case. But I just learned this morning that one of my daughter's high school, colleagues in high school, who just graduated recently, is now teamed up and I think even living with one of the more up and prominent but still up and coming manosphere fitness influencers online. Yeah. and so we kind of were, without even thinking of it this way, we're having that kind of conversation this morning. Like, without the interruptive moment, he just quickly got dragged off into this whole thing about if men only criticize other men because their testosterone is too low. Oof. Like that's where. So I think I think your show here is a great version, representation of these interruptive moments that we have to be if we want to get people,
I guess that's fair. That's fair. And
that one kind of messed with me. I was like, it's too close.
That's rough.
That 6 degrees of this is too close. And I had actually heard of this dude because I watched criticisms of that fitness space, and this dude has already come up in my feed a few times, and now I find out one of my own. They weren't in the same friend group, thankfully, but someone that she was in class with is now. If you're talking about get your testosterone up. Oh my God!
Wow. So I guess we'll just have to keep providing these moments.
89 and counting,
right? And I did. We will have a guest. I didn't forewarn you, but since we had to change topics, it just so happens that I know some folks that were out at Delaney when everything happened on Thursday. And so one of them will join us for the latter half of the show to talk about, what he saw and give some firsthand accounts of like what's going on at Delaney Hall. Cause it's been interesting, like watching this from next door, right? Because I literally live like 10 minutes from Newark. And so there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening with ICE. There's a lot happening with immigration. And I find myself always like reminding myself, like, none of this is really new, right? And I know people get angry when I say like, it's not new. It's not just Trump. It's that, but I think it's really important that people not focus on this specific administration and what they're doing. Because if that becomes the focus, then you lose focus on the greater system of why we have fake borders that would kill thousands of people who are trying to get away from situations that we have caused in other nations and countries. And that the level of people being deported is not even where it's been its highest, right? Like it's not even like comparable yet. And not to say it won't become that, but for people to understand that this is all just part of what happens. Like, immigration has been a long standing quote unquote issue for politicians and for election cycles, and the borders, and we got to protect the borders, and so part of what annoys me when I see like the media feeds on what's happening is the media didn't care when people were dying in deserts, right? Like they weren't talking about that. There was very little focus on what was happening at the borders during Biden's administration. Like nobody talks about the millions of people who were deported, right? And it's because it didn't fit the narrative at the moment. And so, I really want to encourage people, and I understand that there is a fear that comes with knowing that ICE will show up somewhere and take your family. I'm not at all in any way, shape, or form attempting to be dismissive of what happens with that. I want people to understand that is happening the way it's happening and being presented the way it's being presented so people can be fearful, right? It was different families before who had that fear, and we just weren't talking about it. And so I just want to make sure that, we don't lose sight of the fact that we live in a place that actively causes people to have to leave their homelands in an attempt to seek what they think is going to be a safer place to survive. And then they get here and it's not that set up at all. And it's the system, right? It's our overall structure. It's the overall, attempt to draw these lines in places. I saw a great note in my the Second Rainbow Coalition chat that there's a huge indigenous population in Mexico who ended up in Mexico because they were fleeing Texas, right? And so I didn't know that. Like, this was news to me, right? And so we have to remember that we're all, we all have to start looking at this as a systemic problem. And I don't want it to become about Trump. So this is why I'm always reminding people that this is not a new situation, that this is not a new problem, that this is not a new response to folks who are trying to come to this country. It is the way it is being presented, and it's intentionally presented that way in hopes that people will just ignore that the system itself is a problem. So.
Now, right on. Yeah, right on. And yeah, because I am leaving immediately to after the show to go to Annapolis to the Green Party Assembly.
Nice.
I've been thinking about what exactly I would say, and one of the points I do want to make is that these alternative electoral efforts are necessary because, if for no other reason, as reminders that the Democrats and the liberals are as responsible for all this as the Republicans. That if you are in office and have power and elected officials throughout the country, everywhere, and are incapable of producing a society where what is happening now is impossible, or at least highly unlikely as opposed to predictable, then I'm not interested in all of the now the bloviating and the people doing YouTube videos and bigger broadcasts with the whole, this is what basically with the attitude of this is what y'all get type of attitude. And then and even the more tacit suggestion that we need to get back to the maturity of the Democratic Party. I'm not interested in hearing that. So to your point, I get it. Things are a bit different. There are variations to the hostility, at least the overt aggression. But I just to what I also understood your point to be, don't want to lose sight of the context in which all this actually emerged. And if everything was actually good a week ago, then this could not have happened. So anyway,
right. And people in the chat are talking about it, so I just don't want to ignore it, because this is about to be some wild stuff. It appears that one of the heads of the Democratic state Senate in Minnesota was unalived with her husband.
Oh, wow.
In her home, in what Tim Walz is announcing is a targeted political assassination. So this is interesting. And I don't know anything about this politician. I don't know anything about this, like, I don't know anything, but people are talking about it in the chat. And so I don't want to,
this story, I don't know if I'm able to, is it showing?
That's the one. Yeah, it's showing.
Yeah. Melissa Hartman and Representative Melissa Hortman and Senator John Hoffman shot in targeted shootings.
Interesting. So
two Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses were shot by someone impersonating a police officer early Saturday morning. Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark were killed. Senator John Hoffman and his wife are undergoing treatment in the hospital. The shootings happened in Chaplin and Brooklyn Park. Wow.
So this is interesting. So, and I'm always less inclined to just jump on whatever headline has been supported and presented by officials, because we all know where that sometimes goes. But it'll be interesting to see. So I don't know if folks know that there was recently a one of these questioning things with the Senate, and Tim Walz was one of the Democratic governors that got called in to testify before the Senate about ICE and immigration. And he, funny enough, he was basically like, well, we're not really a sanctuary city. Like, I don't know. He was basically like, I don't know what I'm doing here. We're not a sanctuary city. And on top of that, like, Tim Walz called his own military on his people in 2020. So like, it was very interesting to see, like, because he was there with Kathy Holcomb and I'm blanking on who the third person was, but they all got called in to testify about these sanctuary cities. And it's been interesting to watch how this all plays out, because every time a place gets labeled as a sanctuary city, like, or a sanctuary state, whatever, the state quickly moves forward to, like, be clear that they're not really sanctuary, right? Like, like, for everything that's happening in LA, right? Like, the mayor, who is a Black woman, I'd like everyone to be mindful of, is the person who said there was going to be a curfew. It's her police officers who are, out there beating people up. Like, this is, like, all of these people are all in cahoots. And so I'm watching and listening to, some of these responses to the ICE raids and to what's happening in multiple places, and watching how those local officials are responding to things, and it's reminding me of Harvard, right? And so you have this place that is on surface seeming to be pushing back and fighting against Trump, but internally, like, they're all on board. They're not doing anything that's actually going to combat the systemic issues, right? Like, they're not doing anything that's going to allow anything to change. And so I'm just always constantly reminded of how via media and via statements, quote unquote, and all these things, people are easily led to believe that there's an actual pushback, but there is no actual pushback, right? Like, they're all just embedded and just going along with the nonsense. So I don't know, but I'll be watching this story because I'm interested to see, like what they find out, like what all is going on. And it looks like the person got away, the people got away, and so there's a manhunt now. So
and there's also apparently a lot of protests going on around the country today as well.
Yeah, for No King's Day.
Mm-hmm. So and this is also sort of one of the points I hope to make in my few minutes today, that for all the well-meaning and good-spiritedness in these protests, they currently have no meaningful electoral political option. That is, the outlet electorally for this energy is at this point I can only be dissipated at best into the Democratic Party. And that's why I think we have to find different ways of engaging electoral politics, even if multiple parties, alternative parties, after parties.
We still we need to dedicate some time to flesh out this like after party, because I feel like even now, like now that we're not in one of these like electoral cycles, which is Lord knows about to start again, and I don't particularly agree with the theory that like there's never going to be another election. I could be wrong, like, I don't know, I think elections are they're too supportive of the capitalist system and structure, right? Like, too much money is made during election cycles for it to go away. So I just don't.
But again, and for me, I love, I'm always willing to do that exploration. But if there is to be no other or future elections, or even if there is to be no future engagement with elections, that to me still requires an electoral political strategy. Right. That I don't think we have a meaningful, haven't really developed, for the quote unquote real left in this country. So even because again, disengagement does not mean disorganization in my mind. So it just whatever we do, it has to be there has to be some meaning and thought behind it, and with an idea of ultimately how do we end up with political power? And what then does that look like? So what I think what I meant for us to put back on your list of many things is our discussion at one point of revisiting the Socialist Reconstruction book here. Because I continue to think that however people feel about the PSL or socialism, what they're arguing in this book is of great value to how people, I think we can think about moving from wherever we are now. And again, even if it is to use this which was always my point, at least once upon a time, as a mechanism to get people to higher stages of political organization, because I think electoral political parties are just one. I keep thinking it's be such an easy stage to get to, but I'm obviously wrong on that. But yeah, just some clarity around it, because
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree, and there's definitely there's just a lot. There's just a lot, but at the core of it all, I think organization and getting people to really be on board with even just the strategy of how do you organize for power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if we can do anything, right? If we can do anything, like that would be, to me, a really good place for us to kind of work with folks, like working around this idea of like how do we engage people in this desire, and really, like, at this point we're gonna have to do it, or it's gonna be a mess, right? Like we have to start working towards organizing towards some kind of power structure so that we don't die, because that is that simple.
So is our I know. No, I was really just gonna say is I think we're ready to transition, because I know you got a lot of stuff on the run sheet. Just reminding people, as I see more people are here now, to like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. All the links in the show description, and the link to the full video that I featured early in the discussion is in the show description. And yeah, ready.
So I guess let's start with LA, because we should probably hold off to talk Jersey for after, once our guest gets here.
Right.
So there's some wild stuff happening in LA. So there's two videos. One is from Breakthrough News, and one is the video of the person getting trampled that I saw it and I was like, okay, this is just wild that this actually like physically happened.
Yeah, here it is here.
So
that's
like,
yeah.
So like that this is what's happening, right? Like you have someone physically getting trampled. There was another video I saw of someone getting run over by a car. Like this is the wild, like they're wilding in LA right now. And what I think is interesting is because of all the different groups that I organize with, I'm in chats with like a lot of different people. And what I'm really understanding is that so many people in LA are going out and there is not violence because the police are not showing up and causing violence, right? So the places where these things happen are the places where the police show up with the intention of creating a problem, of inciting violence, and get like this is what happens. So before we go to the Breakthrough News clip, because I think what the young person is, and I'm assuming she's young, I probably shouldn't, but there's also this thing about the Marines getting trained. So row 14 is a clip from, it might be ABC News, I don't know, but this is them talking about like before the Marines got sent to LA, right? They got trained. But I think what they say about what the Marines, like what the role is supposed to be when these people get to these spaces, it was interesting. It was very interesting. So I thought it would be worth. It's not working.
No, it is. Well, that's not why I'm shaking my head, but at least not yet.
And I just love, FYI, y'all, who they sent to go do, like, that this
Camilo
dude
Montoya Galvez.
I'm like, why we always got to do that? But sorry.
Underwent several
go ahead.
layers
My bad.
No, it's good. Go ahead.
Okay.
training, including on crowd control and also on de-escalation tactics. And it is really important to note that, according to the Department of Defense, these Marines also received instruction under legal authorities. And that is critically important because under longstanding federal law, the military, including the Marines, cannot engage in civilian law enforcement work. And that would, of course, include the enforcement of U.S. immigration law. That is, if the government does not invoke the Insurrection Act, which has not occurred in this case, at least yet. And in terms of what the Marines will be doing here in Southern California, they are expected to play a very similar role to what the National Guard has been doing here. As you can see behind me, you see National Guard troops guarding a federal building, including the immigration court in downtown LA and also the local ICE field office. The National Guard, however, has also been joining ICE operations throughout Southern California to protect the deportation agents who are arresting and identifying immigrants suspected of being in the country illegally. The Marines, Reed, are expected to join those efforts in the next day or so.
So I just want to point out to everybody that any version of de-escalation training that's given to law enforcement does not work. Okay? So, like, I can't.
And I was shaking my head because of my bias around my very limited experience with Marines, and the idea that Marines are going to be sent in to act with some thought and to be peaceful and de-escalationist is just absurd.
Right.
That to me is like the least likely entity to perform those duties.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to point out that while he's explaining how someone, like the Marines arrested someone outside of the federal building, it's all recorded, right? If they are there to support an ICE operation, like, you mean to tell me that if they go into a space and they're there to quote unquote protect the ICE agents, that they're not going to, like, the whole thing is so absurd. Like, this whole idea that you're going to bring in the military as a de-escalation tactic. Like, can we just stop? Can we just stop? Like, can we just stop?
And then the Marines in particular. I mean, it's not like if you're going to use the military at all, you could get like the get the people like that were doing what I was doing, the dishwashers and the painters and
it's wild. So we can go to the breakthrough news clip now, because they did a really good interview with somebody who was on the ground in LA, and I felt like their conversation was a really good one. But the clip that I picked is just what she said. I just felt like was worth sharing, and so we can talk about it in a second.
Exactly, right. And this all started last Friday when we saw, these blitz raids happening all over the city. There was a huge community response to these raids, particularly in the fashion district of downtown LA. Community members were shouting out know your rights information, asking for their names so their families were aware. Community members have been only met with violence from these federal agents, from the police, from LA sheriffs, like I mentioned. They've been throwing flashbangs, injuring many people, including David Huerta, who is the California president of one of the biggest unions here in the state. And, it's been really a sight, right? And we saw over the weekend, federal agents preparing to raid Home Depots, right? In particular in Paramount, which is a city in Southeast Los Angeles. It's actually a couple miles away from me right now, and also on the border of Compton. And these are working class neighborhoods with a high population of immigrants. it's no coincidence, right, that they're targeting cities in Northeast LA and Southeast LA with these raids, given its highly dense populations, its big populations of immigrants, right? And the community response has been incredible to see, right? We're seeing that people are fighting back. They're saying, ICE, get out of Paramount, ICE, get out of Compton. We're seeing federal agents and LA sheriffs there really protecting these agents, right? And supposedly they're not collaborating, but we're clearly seeing that they're definitely in cahoots. And so, you know, I think it's really the people's resilience, right, to stay in the streets that has really kept people like me to really continue to fight back. And we're actually seeing, you know, some victories, right? You know, DHS and ICE agents, they're lodging in several hotels in the county. And, you know, the people have been successfully been able to mobilize and really demand that these hotels kick them out. And we saw this happen in the city of Glendale. We saw this happen in the city of Arcadia. And so, you know, we can't really predict what's going to happen next, but we know that the people are angry. We know that the people are full of energy to continue to fight back and protect their communities.
I mean, the reason I really wanted to show that clip is because I think it's important that people understand, like, this is happening because the people decided they were not going to sit at home and watch this happen in their community, right? And there is a strength in that, right? Like it's like that they got the hotels to kick people out, I think is hysterical. Like, I'm all about that. Right? Like how about
you
it?
know, sometimes I'm thinking, you know, given who staffs most of these hotels, maybe go ahead and invite them to stay. Invite them to stay a little while. You know, because you need me to cook your food and clean your room and bring you your late night, what is it, room service? All right, come on in. You know.
But then they have a bed, so I'm like, I also like.
Do they? Do they?
Oh,
what
well,
is the
that's
condition
true,
of the sheets on those beds? Like, how comfortable? I mean, I'm just saying. It's just so many things that they are dependent on, especially in a hotel.
True.
Like, go ahead. Like, come on in. Come on in.
Facts. That is facts.
Because look, and unfortunately, as a younger, more ignorant man, I'm speaking from experience. Like, you want me to clean your room? Sure. You want me to clean your bathroom? No problem. You want me to do your dishes? Got you. But I get mine. And one way or another. So especially in this context, that's why I'm like, anyway, don't let me stop.
No, but I get it. I really am in support of the fact that this is all coming from the ground, right?
Yeah.
And I am that interview on Breakthrough is actually really good. And she said a lot about really like the necessity for people to come out. And so this is something that we've been talking about a lot, right? Like, especially in these past 2 years with trying to be out and in full force in support of the Palestinian people, like this need to not be silent in this moment, right? And to not just pretend like things aren't happening, right? And so I think that a lot of these things are being actually led by people on the ground is really important. And it almost it's funny because I almost want to reread Two Black's book, because I'm reminded again of like being mindful that when people come into an area to try and lead something, right? That's always when the problems start. So I am appreciating watching this happening and watching it be like people who actually live in these communities who are coming out and saying, y'all get out of here, right? And so I think that's so I just think it's important, and it was important enough to point out and to really get people to understand that what was happening in LA is a groundswell based on what the people were sick of, right? Like the people didn't want to sit around and watch ICE come in and like do nonsense. Like they didn't want to be party to that. And so they went outside. And sometimes you just have to go outside.
Good for them.
Right. So the other thing coming out of LA that I also think is hysterical is the senator who got arrested for going into Christy Dom's her whatever she was doing, and so they tackled him and the whole thing. And I don't want to give him, like, this is also what Democrats do. So I don't really want to give him too much credit, because if anybody continued to read the articles, he's already had his personal meeting with Christy Nom so they could talk, right? So they've already worked it out, right? Like, ain't nothing gonna. So, it's not really like, to me, this is similar to like Ross Baraha getting arrested outside of Delaney, right? Like, it happened,
yeah.
but
Theater.
like, yeah, it's theater, right? Like, they let him in the room. So once you get let into the room and they like, like the doors open for you and you're allowed to go into the room, like anything that happens after that, I always have to question like how much of this was like legit. Because in the end, like, I don't know, what is Padilla doing for his people, right? Like, what is he doing to get the Marines out of California? Like, what is he doing to stop ICE from picking up people? What is he doing to prevent people from getting run over by horses or shot in the face by rubber bullets? Or like, what is he doing for any of that? I don't know. But I will say the pictures in the video were funny because
is this a commercial? Just real quick, I think Alex, I did not see what Stephen A. Smith said about this, so please send a link.
Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your
I also want to
hands up.
How many of our ICE agents have been shot?
On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you don't my hands, go ahead, put behind my back.
All right. Cool. One hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
so this is all kaboom. Like, this is theater to me. Right? Like, I can't.
You're recording aloud out here for FBI, right?
I can't even take it. I can't even take it seriously. Like, And then of course you have all these other Democratic people now standing up. Oh, it's such an injustice, and this is authoritarianism, and none of them are doing anything to stop anything. You know what I mean? Like, none of them are doing anything to stop anything, but they're so quick to like do the performance.
Yeah, and I won't pretend to know enough about his track record before any of this kicked off. But to your point, you said he's already in the meetings, and but it goes back again to the whole point of the liberal counterinsurgency, the Jared Ware and Orasami Burton and Dylan Rodriguez and others are leading the conversation around that's what's being attacked by Trump and his crew. So that is a literal, a very physical, material example of the liberal counterinsurgency being attacked. Mm-hmm. And we're supposed to rise in defense of what has been suppressing more advanced politics and for a long time. And
right.
To your point, it's, would you say kabuki?
Kabuki, because it's so annoying. Like I see the story and like all the people talking, and I'm like, do y'all even understand who you are going to bat to defend? Like I got in a fight on a Facebook chat because people were like, I'm gonna vote for Ras Baraka. He's the only progressive politician. And I was like, Ras Baraka straight up said like out loud on the radio, like we can't make the elections a one issue thing, and so you have to ignore that Kamala Harris is a genocidal maniac. Because
you played the clip here where he
right,
said the only problem the Democrats have is a branding problem.
right,
Because he said we do all the work. The
right,
party already does all the work. All the good work is already being done. It just has a branding issue. I was like, oh, we're okay. That's
right.
deep.
Like it's
Yeah.
wild. It's wild.
So,
All right. So our guest is here. And so we can talk about what all has been happening in New Jersey. I've got some clips for y'all. I fell down a rabbit hole and found a report from 2018 that I didn't even like know existed until last night. But Wendell, if you're ready, give a thumbs up and we can pull you up.
and as we do, everybody, just please be reminded to like, share, subscribe, support the platform. All the links in the show description. Put this in your socials. Make sure you like, comment, all those things. And Wendell, welcome to the show.
Peace, peace. How are y'all doing?
Good. Thank you so
Good
much.
as to be expected. Thank you. Yeah.
Wendell is last night I'm on my CMB Newark chat like, y'all, we don't have a guest. Is anybody free tomorrow? So we are currently in conflict with the BAP meeting, and so Wendell stepped up and agreed to join, and I'm really appreciative. Wendell, can you introduce yourself to folks and tell everybody like where you're at and how you got involved with CMB Newark, and then we can talk about what's going on at Delaney.
Cool. Yeah. So in other words, what Renee was trying to say, I was the absolute last option, last resort, which is all good. But hopefully y'all can bear with me. So my name is Wendell Marsh. I'm a recent member, a new member to CMB Newark, but also affiliated with Newark Solidarity Coalition, the formation that held a 40-day encampment in Newark with Solidarity with Gaza last year. In my day job, I'm a professor of Black Studies, Africana Studies at Rutgers Newark. I started with CMB mostly because, some of the homies were going in that direction here in Newark. Folks, been organizing with since at least a strike of university workers in 2023. There's just been a lot of political development in Newark, in and around the university also. So that's kind of has been my path to a lot of this work. And
thank you.
Yeah.
And I will tell y'all, Wendell's so full of it. It was not, there's no such thing as a last, so stop. But I will tell an embarrassing story about myself, which is that I had a whole conversation with Wendell and then walked away and realized that we were on a chat together. And so I had to go back and apologize because
that's just good security protocol. That's okay.
I'm the worst. It happens, but I'm trying. I'm working on it, y'all. It'd be so hard to keep folk in like in order in my head. So just a quick understanding, and we've talked about Delaney here before. Delaney Hall is the 1,000-bed facility that was opened in Newark earlier this month. It was announced to be open in February. The reason it became part of the conversation here was because I felt that Ras Baraka's response to ICE announcing they were opening this 1,000-bed facility was lackluster and mealy-mouthed at best. And so now that the facility is open, there have been multiple like press conferences and rallies. People have been out there basically every day trying to like bring eyes to the fact that Delaney is open. Part of the issues with Delaney is that it is in one of the environmental corridors that is it's actually a health hazard for anybody to be living in that area. But on Thursday, there was essentially a breakout, which I'm going to try my best not to giggle too much about, but like they just pushed the wall down and people bounced and like ran out of Delaney. And so I'm all about it. And so, but some folks from CNB Newark, Josh and Wendell and some like folks have been going out regularly to be out there with the people. And so Wendell was out there on Thursday while all this was happening. And so I wanted someone to come in who was actually on site and on the ground while all this was going on. And before I let Wendell kind of talk about some of the history of Delaney and why it's so important with the community organizing, Jared, if you don't mind, we have a clip, part of the ICE. It's Thursday night at Delaney. And this is from Status Quo. Shout out to Jordan Sheridan and Status Quo News and John Farina, who was out there on the ground. But this is just some of what was going on Thursday night out at Delaney.
Bro, who are you, bro? Yo! Hey, yo! Hey, yo! Get back! Let's go. This is exactly what we don't want to hear.
We can stop it now. It's a lot of the same. And they did end up with the tear gas. And I just quickly will point out that this happened because the group had been successful at preventing vehicles from going in and out of the facility. And so they set up a barricade and they were literally blocking people, blocking vehicles from coming in and out of Delaney. And so that was the end result, was it got violent because like what they were doing was working. So I'm going to turn it over to Wendell. I don't want to talk too much. If you want to give some history about like Delaney and the area and how this all started with folks being like out at Delaney on a regular, and what brought you out there. So we can start there.
Yeah, so thanks so much for that. At least since February of this year, when Delaney was, it was first announced that it would be reopened, there's been steady organizing coalitional work around not opening it and kind of limiting its operations. It's been a whole coalition of organizations such as COSECHA, the New Jersey Alliance for Immigration Justice, Pax Christi, Newark Solidarity Coalition, Progressive Labor Party, Speak Out Socialists, folks from DSA, folks from People's Organization of Progress, right? So a really just robust cross-section of organizations that are active around questions of justice and fighting the carceral state have been working toward, shutting Delaney down. And I think, there have been kind of moments in the past few months where the struggle took, kind of jumps and steps forward. And I think on Thursday, one of the most important leap forward was the action of the captives inside when they decided to tear down a wall, right, and to liberate themselves. And I think that's really important to recognize that really the organizing on the outside in the context of what happened on Thursday really came out of the action of those being held and detained unjustly and facing inhumane conditions, right? So there are reports of starvation, of kind of people not being fed, 20 hours, sometimes full days, definitely skip meals, inadequate food when they are fed. Reports of captives having to sleep on the floor, so the conditions inside prompted this action by those inside, and then and so there's been a whole network though of communication between those inside with their families and with lawyers, and then with a broader network of organizations, struggling on this issue. I first kind of went out to Delaney this week, actually, because of a call that had gone out. So a number of the organizations in the coalition have been taking shifts to do a kind of vigil and ICE watch to kind of witness and to record and document the kind of movements of ICE and the GEO group who runs the facility. And my kind of schedule just kind of opened up this week, and so I finally made it out there on Wednesday. And there was like a flying picket around the entry. And then on Thursday, what brought me out was it was a kind of a call, all out call that went out, and so like so many of the organizational chats, social media came out. And so, there was a call. And so, folks mobilized and came out on the ground after scheduled family visitations were canceled. And the families who were out there, started hearing these loud noises and smelling the tear gas. And that's when the all call came out. And, a number of organizations came out and started engaging in the solidarity actions that we saw, of the type we saw in the video.
Thank you. And I'm glad you because I didn't actually explain at all like what was going on the inside. So I appreciate that you made sure we point that out. Is like, this all began because the captives on the inside were like, wait a minute, we're not getting appropriate food. This place smells. We're sleeping on the floor. And the uprising began inside of the facility. It was when families were notified that something was going on the inside that the calls started to go out. And, like Wendell said, there's been a consistent presence of organizers and organizations out there, trying to make sure that the families are protected when they go to visit their loved ones, that, there's someone available to have, to have resources available to folks when they're going in and out. And so it's really important that I wanted to make sure that people took note of that this began inside of Delaney. And it was when families were not allowed to go inside to figure out what was happening with their loved ones that the call started to go out for more people to come out and support the families and the folks that were inside. So we've been working really hard on our statement. So CMB Newark is going to actually release like a written statement to kind of go through the history of what happened and what happened on site. So can you talk a little bit about what you saw on the ground? And I know Josh had to, he's at the BAP meeting, but he also relayed what he witnessed because he was really there when some of this stuff went down. So can you talk a little bit about what actually happened on Thursday night?
Yeah, so I arrived on site probably around 8 o'clock, maybe a little bit before 8 o'clock on Thursday night. And by that point, the 4 of the unjustly detained folks were had already liberated themselves. One of the first things I saw when I walked up were these tarps that were placed over the razor wire. And at the time, I didn't know why it was there, but it looked weird, but apparently that is what they use to climb the fence. So, I mean, it's really kind of incredible, just the amount of daring to knock down the wall and then just, climb the fence and walk away. And until now, the authorities don't know where they are. And, we wish them the best on their pursuit of freedom. But after that, there was a kind of a downtime. Numbers were relatively low. In some ways, I think there were maybe about 30 people or so at that point. And but very quickly, people started to come out. And there were still kind of families, and there was an important effort to actually make sure families were supported the time that I got there. And there was also a lot of journalists. And so there were these speak outs of some folks in families. But as more people started to come, the kind of solidarity actions grew in militancy. And there was an effective blockade. There was this kind of the sense that, well, if families can't come in, then nobody else is coming in or out either. And so for about a solid hour and a half, if not 2 hours, there was a successful blockade of the entrances, in which I think there was maybe even like a shift change that appeared to have been blocked, as well as just a number of kind of vans, kind of unmarked vans that were trying to go in and out. And so when the group was at its peak, it was successful first by just locking up and kind of having several ranks of deep of people that prevented the vehicles from going through. And then later on, folks on the ground kind of got tactical and put up those barricades. And it was just a really kind of impressive sight just to see how intelligent the crowd was in holding this blockade. And as the night went on, though numbers dwindled, and the video that we saw, I think, was from a bit later on where we were fewer in numbers, and basically the blockade was breached.
Yeah, it took a while for them to figure out how did they get around the people. And I want people to understand. So Delaney is on a pretty major road that goes through Newark, and so at first, earlier in the evening, when they first figured out how to blockade the area, there was a line of police vehicles, including like the Hudson County Sheriff's Department. The FBI was out there. And they eventually had to leave because they were not able to get into the facility, and they were blocking the traffic on this major road that goes through Newark. And so once they realized that they weren't going to be able to get through because a couple of cars had tried to turn into the facility and they were completely unable, and a car tried to come out of the facility, and they had the whole thing, they had the gate blocked, and the car had to back up and get back behind the gate because they weren't going to be able to get through. And at that point, the FBI and the Hudson Sheriff, and I think there was a K9 vehicle also that had showed up, they all had to pull off because it was impossible. Like, they weren't going to be able to get into the facility, and they had been blocking traffic for a while. And so, you know, to me, that's like, that is the, you know, like, you may not be able to stop everything, but for that little bit of time, this group of organizers, right, of regular people, of like families and wives, and like, that just showed up, they created havoc, right? And for that time that they were creating this havoc at Delaney, they could not do anything at Delaney. They couldn't get out, they couldn't get in, they couldn't shift change, they couldn't, you know, it was enough to create enough chaos that they had to eventually, like, the van drove up on the sidewalk and damaged like something at the gate because it could not get, like, it couldn't go through the people, so it had to go around the people. And that was when some of the violence ensued as well. So I just want to point out, like, you know, sometimes you think, like, as a, you know, like, I'm just a regular person, like, what can I do? Well, you can go outside, right? Like, that's what you can do. And it's not always an easy, you know, that's easier said than done for a lot of people. Like, I sent an apology in the chat because I can't go out there, right? I'm not in a position where I can afford to get hurt, to get run over, to get arrested. Like, I'm just like, I can't do that right now. And so I sent apologies, but I tell you what, like, I also sent like a, do y'all need anything? Because I surely would have went by with food or drinks, whatever. Like, if folks needed something from me, I would have gone to provide support. And so there are a multitude of ways that, as a regular person who cares about what's happening in your community, that you can make the attempt to just do something, right? Mm-hmm. And whatever that something is that you choose to do, as long as it's not to sit silently and pretend like it's not happening, then it's worth doing.
Yeah. And even at the action itself, you know what I'm saying, there are different tiers and different roles, right? So, you know, there were folks who, you know, it was clear and it was communicated, like, okay, they're engaging in arrestable action. And then there were also people on site who, you know, were more in support roles. You know, there was folks kind of talking to media. There were, you know, there was a lot of different kinds of activities. But the most important thing, as you said, Renee, was just being out there, not just accepting, you know, this power grab, this flex of power that we're seeing, you know, by the state right now. But there are so many ways to actually contribute and grow the movement.
Agreed. Jared, did you have any questions? I love when Jared
I'm just listening and learning. Yeah, chilling.
I also, y'all, this was a surprise for Jared. He didn't know that I invited anybody until the last minute.
It's all good. Although the one little joke I thought of is given our shared professions, is that I understand why Professor Marsh just recently ran into a little more flexibility in his schedule. If I may be all up in your calendar. That semester closed up, and it's like, yay!
No, exactly. You know, I saw sunlight again after a while. You know,
no doubt, and making good use of it, no doubt.
Yeah. And another thing I'll just say to highlight too, like, because of what Renee was saying, it's this like one way in, one way out kind of situation. It actually didn't take that many people to make a big difference, you know. And this is a street where, you know, this is close to the port, in Elizabeth, you know what I'm saying, one of the busiest seaports on the East Coast. And there's just like a logistics hub. And so, you know, these trucks are moving. And so a relatively small number of people having a big impact. And it was only so much that the authorities could do because they wasn't going to block up the movement of these goods for too long, you know, and I think that really limited. I also want to just follow up by saying last night, you know, ICE and federal agencies escalated their violence. And so it was, I wasn't out last night, but, you know, I've seen some videos and reports from folks on the ground, and it was much worse in terms of the crackdown, but so too, you know, was the resistance. And, you know, some of the captives seem to have been transferred. And it seems that, you know, they recognize that this strategy of using immigration detention to, you know, satisfy domestic policies is just not working. And I think it's really, really important to recognize that, you know, so-called immigration detention is really just a local expression of imperialist power at the core of empire, you know. And so what we're seeing is, you know, a fight that we have to be a part of and to be engaged in.
I agree. Thank you. Jerry, could you pull up real quick? There's a article about the relocation, because I think this is also important for people to understand, like what is now going to happen as a result of the actions that took place this week over at Delaney. So as we explained, some folks got away, and shout out, like, hopefully they're still going. And so
show me where the line is real quick.
It is relocation.
I don't see the
think
word.
It's
That's what
9,
my fault.
row 9.
Oh, okay.
There you go. You see it?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially the reason they were able to push this wall down was because it was like a faux wall, right? It was like it was not like a sturdy wall. So they were able to just push through the wall and people got away. But because
which has happened here. My bad. Sorry about that.
No, it's good. You're good. And so now that this has happened, now all of a sudden folks are paying attention to the fact that this facility is not even like a good place for people to be, right? And so as a result of what's happening, now they're trying to see if they can figure out how to move folks out of, away from this particular facility. Now, the unfortunate part, of course, is like, we don't want these facilities to exist at all. Like, that would be my preference, obviously. And so, but the fact that they're now working to pull people out of the facility and relocate means that between what happened inside and what happened outside, they are recognizing that Delaney is not a good space for this, right? And so, if at the least there's a shutdown of a facility, it's something, right? I don't know how this will all transpire. And unfortunately, I think some of these families are going to end up with their family members being even further away. But the facility should not exist. It should not be there. And so at the core, as a result of the efforts that happened this week, they're going to try and move people out. Now, Ross Baraka, I'm so sick of him. But so he has taken this opportunity, of course, to speak about, how this is why, like, his response was basically like, this is why people have to go through the process for their facilities to get inspected. Like, that was his response, right? Like, his response was literally like, this is why we have to get things inspected and why you're supposed to go through the process before you open something up. So if you go one cell to the left, it's Baraka's statement, Jared, because I think it's important for people to understand, just like Chitty saying, all these faces, like they're the faces of empire. So when people go into anything saying like, oh, Ras Baraka is a progressive, like, let's read how he responded to this situation, because it, to me, says a lot. So Ras Baraka's statement on the Delaney breakout. The latest reports from Delaney Hall indicate that 4 detainees, that he uses that word, did indeed escape, and that the egress was accomplished by kicking through an interior wall. As stated in our ongoing legal complaint, the city of Newark has never received permit applications from Geo Group to construct an interior wall. Had it applied for a certificate of occupancy and or construction permits, the city would have inspected the integrity of that wall. This chaotic outcome is precisely why the city has ordinances requiring all facilities, including this ICE facility, to apply for the proper permits, and why we have taken the Geo Group to court to ensure the safety of both detainees and their own employees. This incident is yet another outrageous validation of the negative consequences of a federal government that believes it's above the prudence and practicality of working within legal parameters and encourages reckless operations of its collaborators. Now, he says all of that and he pretends like he's not in collaboration, right? Because to me, what this statement says very clearly is I don't really have a problem with ICE operating here, and I don't have a problem with this ICE facility being open. What I have a problem with is that you didn't pay the city to do its inspections and to get its specific permits so that, you could detain people properly. That's what this statement says for all the people out there in the world who think Ras Baraka is progressive.
And this, to all the points we've been making all morning, this Geo Group, I mean, they've been, folks been calling them out for years for their privatized relationship to mass incarceration and even the music industry through incestuous boards of directors and co-ownership and things of that nature, and what was promoted there to people that they will happily make money off of getting locked up later on in life. Like this is so to your point, Renee, he's not out here against the already existing structures of violence and hostility. He's simply saying you all didn't go through the proper permit. Now, I'm sure a Ras Baraka defender, though, would argue to perhaps both of you that this is a tactical approach, that this is Ras using the mechanisms of power to get to a common result or a similar end. But I do think the frame you're working with is correct.
And and it's really, I cannot say it enough, that simply trusting a black face in a high place because it's a black face is like completely counterproductive to all revolution, right? Because they got there for a reason, right? There's a reason that Ras Baraka is allowed to do these things, right? And I will note that for all of everybody's jumping up and down, oh, he got arrested and this, that, and the other thing, the charges have already been dropped against Ras Baraka. Okay, so there is no ongoing anything between Ras Baraka and any of these people. He is now, quote unquote, suing for his outrageous arrest and all this stuff. Meanwhile, the woman, the city councilwoman who has now been indicted, right, by the DOJ, she's about to go through it. So I don't know what she did to piss Ras Baraka off, why she didn't get off her charges. but it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, because in the end, like, this is what power does, right? He has, from the minute he did that PBS interview where his response was literally like, oh, well, I mean, if they get the permits, there's nothing we can do. And I was like, wait a minute. like, but like you are in charge of the people who give the permits, right? So the way to respond to this is say, like, we're not giving them no permits, right? Like, we're not going to let them open. But he's not interested in that. He's interested in being a part of the political structure and being a part of the power structure that only results in oppressing his people. And unfortunately, there's so many people who are on board with Ras Baraka and who will continue with like this facade based on whatever nonsense he's talking about at the minute. Like, it's wild.
And at the same time, I think what was so beautiful about this week is that the action of the captives themselves have changed the calculus completely, right? So before, the figure of Ras Baraka was looming over the entire question, and it seemed to define what would or wouldn't happen with Delaney Hall. But because of what those detained themselves did, right? Because of what the families around them outside was supporting them, and then the community coalition that rallied to their support, right? The calculus has changed, the terrain has changed because of that, rendering Baraka on this specific question more or less irrelevant.
And that's where he needs to be, in my opinion. So
yeah. So I actually need to run.
Yeah, I was just about to say, is there anything else that you wanted to add before we let you go?
I think I would just say that keeping in mind the connections, right? Always trying to remember and think about connections, right? So first and foremost, the uprising and resistance around Delaney Hall is connected to a very long history of the struggle against policing and prisons in New Jersey. We can think about recent history or deeper histories with, of course, the 67 revolt, etc. But it's also connected with the current moment of what's happening in LA. And of course, it's connected to the global struggle, right? And all of these different connections are bearing down on what's happening in Delaney. Is also a way for those who are here in New Jersey to act on those other problems as well, right? It's all connected. And so wherever you are, however you are, you can come struggle with us and, fight to, end this fucked up system.
There we go.
Right on.
Appreciate
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
All
for
right.
coming. I appreciate you.
Right on.
All right,
Peace.
comrade.
Peace. Take care. All right. Right on. Shout out to Black Studies.
There you go. That worked out well. I appreciate, like, I was like, wait a minute. I know people who were at the lady. Who can come on? Somebody get on and talk about what was going on. Because I think it's really, really important that people like just do something. I don't know how else to say it. Like, just do something. I don't, and everybody has to decide what that something is, what they're capable of doing. And as I've said multiple times, like, I am simply not in a position to do some of the things that I would really like to do, because I don't want to risk my son not having me, like, literally, like that's what it's about. And I realize that there are a lot of people historically who have been willing to make that risk, and for the majority of them, they left their children behind, right? And so I'm not willing to make that risk. So
I also think, as important as those overt protests are, again, I think, and marches are, and I think historically, I've admitted I've been, I think, maybe overdoing it in my criticism of them. But I do think that there are other forms of work and protest that people can engage in that are just as meaningful as those actions there. So salute to them, and but those doing whatever else they can do to contribute should also get some recognition and And I don't think any of us need to be made to feel any kind of guilty for not being able to be as active in those ways as others are, or as we may at times want. So
yeah, I agree.
you know.
I agree. So somebody did ask, and since before we leave New Jersey and finish up, we got like 20 minutes left. I can't believe we might actually make it through the run sheet. I said to my mother this morning, I was like, I don't know, it's a lot of stuff on the run sheet. We might not get through all of it, but maybe we will. Who knows? So Sally wanted to know, I'm really curious about your thoughts on the New Jersey governor's race. What's your take? And so,
and they've been cutting up in the chat.
Yeah, they sorry y'all. I know they made y'all mad, and I don't do the ADOS thing, and so folks know like it's all soda over here. I don't really rock with none of that nonsense. But the question is a valid question, and so I think it's but I'm not going to ignore a valid question. So, so for folks who do not know, the primary for the governor's race of New Jersey just happened earlier this week. It was, which now I'm like interested that all these things happened during the same week. It hadn't even like crossed my mind, and so to make that connection that all of these things are happening at the same time. So it was a wide field of candidates. There were, I think, like 7 people on the Democratic side and like another 5 or 6 people on the Republican side. A war hawk has won on both sides, which is, not shocking. And so, but Ross Baraka had put his hat in for the Democratic primary. So one of the things that, was happening was a lot of people were talking about like, this idea that you can get a progressive in, right? And that progressive was supposed to be Ross Baraka, which if we say so, a lot of the Democratic candidates were APAC candidates when they were, running for other positions. Obviously the Republican candidates were all about all the wrong stuff. But in the end, really, I feel like the Jersey governor's race is just another version of the presidential race, which is that you can be a part of the duopoly, and you can pick between the red and the green candidate if you so choose, or I don't know, you could vote for the Green Party candidate because there is one, right? And so just so folks know, like, the Green Party in New Jersey was able to get somebody on the ballot, and shout out to Steve Zielinski. He's going to be running in New Jersey. And so there is an opportunity to vote outside of the duopoly. There's an opportunity to not vote for the lesser evil, because in the end, not for nothing, like the Democratic candidate is not any better than the Republican candidate. They're both war hawks. They're both on board with Israel. They're both like, it's just, it's brutal. Like there's no escaping what the system has set up by forcing us to be consistently fighting between these two parties. And so, so that's where my opinion is. I just like, it's Mickey Sherrill. I mean, I don't know if there's anything more to say about Mickey Sherrill than that, on all of her publicity is a military helicopter. Like that's her, like that's like her symbol. But for the question, yes, I would absolutely have Steve on. Steve is a trip. He doesn't go anywhere without his cowboy hat and his cowboy boots. He is all about sustainable farming and teaching people how to live off the land. He is all about the environment. He is all about letting people live free. Love Steve. He's a great person. And I really am, I'm really interested in seeing like how this, if we're able to get any real push behind him, because I think at the core of it, like Steve cares about people and he wants to see people survive, and he's not on board with the capitalist system. And so, I'm all about it. So that's my take.
Sounds good to me.
But Steve is a cut up though. He's a cut up. So when we bring a ball, y'all be prepared because he cracks me up. But he be everywhere.
Listen, on some level, when it comes to voting, I think we need to be more interested in our relationship to the candidate and the party in question and what they would actually look to support and enact policy wise. I don't care what they wear, who they sleep with, what their favorite drink is, who their favorite team is. I don't care who's on their playlist. I don't care. So, be a cut up, be straight laced, so called, be somewhere else, wherever else. But what you gonna do?
Right.
What are the politics?
Right.
So, and I am convinced, I really do. I would be fascinated if I actually looked at one point, never found any, but if there's any research that exists on the true voting patterns of those who claim to be left of voting at all. I'm just convinced that more people end up voting for the Democratic Party than end up admitting. And I'm also convinced that they are not sufficiently active anywhere else politically. That part's probably more easily demonstrated, but I have just sneaking suspicion that. So in other words, my point is, I think it's great to see yet another example of an alternative that you can vote for. And it's a perfectly legal, easy thing to do, to cast a vote.
Right.
So,
and I remain just in this, my conundrum remains where I recognize fully that the system does not work. I recognize fully that for a lot of people, participating in a process of a system that does not work, it feels wasteful. But I also just feel like I can't ignore the fact that in not participating, you leave everything to the hands of people you least want to be making the decisions. Like I don't know. And I don't know how to resolve, I don't know how to resolve that. I don't have a means to resolve that at all.
I just am also in that somewhat in that the way August Nimps was pointing us to in his work, that it's also a measure of who's with us for something else. I think that is, if we can get, being, who those willing to vote left of the Democratic Party, I think represent maybe represent a countable number, a percentage of the population that is ready for more advanced thinking in terms of what society may evolve to. And so, it's not just, I mean, I agree with your point about not leaving it to whoever the enemy is, but I just also think that it's a very simple, easy initial step to take to something else. And how are we going to get to all of these other politics that people who support the Democratic Party claim that they want to get to, if we're not able to even unify around something as simple as casting a vote in the relative privacy of our own individual action? That's how I keep thinking of it. So
yeah, that makes sense. So we got like 10, 12 minutes, because I know you got to roll, so you're not.
Yeah, I got to get on the road. Yeah.
But I'm
actually going outside, and it's just
you're going outside. But in my search about the ICE protests and people going outside, I came across this report out of Omaha.
Oh wow!
Listen, and y'all, I just, as we are in pursuit of understanding how media works, I just felt like this was so. it's just everything about media that's problematic is like part of this report, and everything about how the media placates to the system, right? So there's two different there's two different times,
And it's
and
the
I didn't.
video that's on the thing, right? The news story.
Yes.
All right, I gotta let the ad. All right, hold on. I didn't want to subject the audience, our illustrious audience,
and
to
I'm
the ad.
sorry to subject the audience to this, but I can explain it more after we watch the clips. So
here's the first one.
Just
tell me when to stop.
Yep.
Quote, we are thankful for how peacefully protesters in Omaha have handled reaction to the ICE raid so far. Acts of violence or vandalism will not be tolerated and frankly hurt any message protesters want to give. You can read Mayor.
You can pause that. I just want everybody to take a look
But
at May.
he needs his PR team needs to hook him up. They've done him dirty with that's not the photo for you, bro. But you know, but again, that not it's nonsense. As you pointed out already, the violence at these things are the result of ICE and the police. It's not the protesters,
right? And so before you play the second one,
mm-hmm.
So there was a raid at a facility in Omaha where they just walked in and they stole like 70 people, right? It was like they kidnapped like 70 people out of this one facility. And so there's been like a set of multiple protests, and where in Omaha is right now where the College World Series is happening. And so they have, kind of taken this opportunity for the first night of the College World Series to kind of come out and like, try and be in the face of things. But there's been in the media this real focus on how peaceful the protests are, right? And so I'm like, come on, man, you can't. But okay, so go ahead and play this one now.
One of the main focuses was making sure that this protest remained peaceful. They really wanted this to be about the message they're sending, about that message of unification, keeping families together. They did not want this to be anything that would steer the messaging away from that. Now, we just saw them kind of make their way on the Martin Luther King pedestrian bridge where I'm actually at right now. They made their way closer towards Capitol Street, and then, of course, down along 10th Street over to Charles Schwab Stadium. Of course, we'll be getting more reaction.
You want to talk anything about what they're protesting, why they're upset, what their goals are, what's happening? It's just just be peaceful. Get your message out. What's your message? That's irrelevant. Just be peaceful.
Bruh. And so, they did explain, like we scrolled through it, they did explain like what kicked it off with, and that's how I understand how many people they had taken out of this facility. But all I could think to myself was, yeah, like they put this first of all, the picture of the mayor just had, like, I had to rewind it so I could actually read the statement, because I was so thrown off by the picture. I was like, why they do that to this man?
They set him up.
And then they put this poor guy out there. Talk about he on Martin Luther King. He's on the Martin Luther King. Like, I mean, it was just like a coordinated effort to do this story in the worst way humanly possible, in order to ensure that we make it clear that in the place where the college baseball series is happening, we're able to do a peaceful protest. Like, it's so absurd, man. It's just,
and they want the message to get out, though, Renee. That's why they're saying it. That the emphasis is they want the message to be clear.
They want it to be clear. They want to make sure that everyone is real clear.
Your message with your violence.
I mean, it's just terrible. It's terrible. But it is in line with how media works. So before I let you go, so you can get on the road and get outside, I dropped a link in the private chat that I had actually forgotten, because now we have it all secured, and I'm really, really excited. So Alec Karakatsanis, go Renee for figuring out how to pronounce the man's name. His book Propaganda was released earlier this year, and he is going to be in New Jersey. We got him to come up. I actually think he's in New York, and it's not really that much of a trip for him. But still, he's on his tour, and he is adding Orange, New Jersey to the tour. He is going to be at the Hub in Orange. And, you know, a lot of this entire book is basically pointing out how the media is complicit with the lies about policing. And so since the media in Omaha is complicit with the lies about, you know, peaceful protest being the only way to get your message out, and, you know, this is how you have to do things, it reminded me that I forgot to share this link. And so folks in Jersey, or who can get to Jersey on July 23rd at 6 o'clock, we're going to have Alec come out. We'll do the conversation about propaganda. We will have books available. He'll do a book signing at the end. So if folks want to talk to him directly, get their book signed. We're trying to work with one of the local bookstores to see if they can manage the book side of this. But either way, we'll have books on site for folks who need to purchase the book. But I'm really excited. I'm a big fan of Alec Karakatsanis. As you know, Jared, I'm always bringing up the stuff that he does, and his work and everything that he's been participating in. So I just wanted to point out that it's secured. Save the date. Maybe we can get Jared outside. We'll see what you're doing. I know it's a Wednesday. It's rough. We'll see. But
the book, I've started the book and enjoying it. I think it's going to be great. So
it's a phenomenal book.
It would be good to check that out.
Very well done. So that's it. That's all.
All right.
That's all I got. You going outside? Give a shout out to Andy when you see him. Tell him I said what up.
And folks, make sure you've liked, shared, subscribed, support the Patreon, ring the bell so you don't miss anything. And again, shout out to Professor Marsh and to Black Studies Done Properly, and to Renee and the Run Sheet. It's been great. So everybody, please do again what you can to support the platform. Get you some of this merch. Get you this. And the tea I'm drinking in here does taste much better in these fly mugs. It's weird how that works.
Yo, the chat is undefeated.
Wow. Oh, wow. What a misdemeanor.
Woo, Lord. All right.
So, all right, there it is. All right,
Thanks, everybody.
Peace. Only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. We'll see you next week with more
Saturday
with Renee.